Gardening advice often sounds like a workout routine. Turn the compost every few days, break up the pile, aerate it constantly, keep it hot. For many gardeners, composting slowly becomes a chore rather than the natural process it was meant to be. The truth is that nature has been composting organic matter perfectly for millions of years without pitchforks, thermometers, or weekly turning schedules. Walk through a forest and look at the ground beneath your feet. Leaves fall, branches decay, fungi spread quietly through the soil, and worms move through the layers undisturbed. No one flips the forest floor, yet it produces some of the richest, most fertile soil on Earth. Today on Nature's Flora, we're exploring a method that brings that same natural process into your garden, the no-turn compost method. This slower, quieter system allows worms, fungi, and microbes to work together to create stable, nutrient-rich humus that improves soil for years. Before we get started, make sure you like this video, share it with fellow gardeners, leave a comment about your compost experience, and subscribe to Nature's Flora so you don't miss more deep dive guides on soil, plants, and the natural systems that support them. Now let's get into how leaving your compost pile alone can actually produce better soil. Why did turning compost become the standard anyway? Well, most traditional composting advice, really focuses on speed. Turning a pile regularly introduces oxygen, which encourages bacteria that thrive in high-temperature environments. This process, known as hot composting, can break down organic materials in just a few weeks. Hot composting certainly has its advantages. It destroys weed seeds, speeds up decomposition, and produces usable compost quickly. For gardeners who need a fast turnaround, that approach can be pretty useful. But rapid decomposition isn't always the best option if the goal is building long-term soil fertility. Hot compost tends to favor bacteria over fungi, and frequent turning disrupts the natural structure created by worms and other soil organisms. The end result can still be good compost, but it may lack the deeper biological complexity that helps soil remain fertile over many seasons. The no-turn method takes a different path. Instead of rushing the process, it allows nature's slower soil builders to take control. What happens when you stop turning the pile? Well, when a compost pile is left undisturbed, the environment inside begins to shift. Instead of a rapidly heating bacterial system, the pile gradually becomes cooler and, honestly, more biologically diverse. Fungi begin spreading through the layers, breaking down tough plant fibers like straw, leaves, and even cardboard. These fungal networks help transform organic debris into stable humus, which is that dark, carbon-rich material that forms the backbone of fertile soil. Earthworms soon move in as well. A quiet compost pile provides exactly the conditions worms prefer: steady moisture, a consistent temperature, and plenty of organic matter to consume. As they travel through the pile, they mix materials naturally while leaving behind nutrient-rich castings. These worm tunnels also create tiny air channels that allow oxygen to circulate throughout the pile. In other words, the biological life inside the compost performs the same aeration that gardeners try to achieve with turning. Over time, the pile becomes a miniature ecosystem, where microbes, fungi, and worms cooperate to build stable soil rather than simply breaking down waste. Building a no-turn compost pile the right way is, honestly, all about getting started on the right foot. The success of a lazy compost system depends largely on how the pile is built in the beginning. A balanced mix of materials ensures that decomposition proceeds smoothly, without becoming overly wet or dry. The foundation of a good pile is a blend of greens and browns. Greens provide nitrogen and moisture, while browns supply carbon and structure. Kitchen scraps, grass clippings, and fresh plant trimmings count as greens. Dry leaves, shredded cardboard, straw, and paper serve as browns. When constructing the pile, alternating layers of these materials helps distribute nutrients evenly. Watering the pile during setup is important as well. Compost organisms require moisture to thrive, and starting with a well-hydrated pile helps the process begin immediately. Once the pile reaches a decent size, around 3 to 4 feet wide and tall, it should simply be left alone. Covering the top with a layer of straw or leaves helps retain moisture and prevents the pile from drying out. After that, time becomes the main ingredient. The rise of worms and fungi is something truly fascinating. Within several weeks, life inside the compost pile begins to flourish. Worm populations often explode as the lower layers become rich feeding grounds. Their constant movement gently mixes materials while improving airflow and moisture distribution. At the same time, thin white fungal strands spread throughout the pile. These fungal networks are responsible for breaking down lignin and other complex plant compounds that bacteria struggle to digest. This fungal activity is particularly important for gardeners growing perennial crops such as berries, fruit trees, and tomatoes. Fungal-dominated soils tend to support deeper root systems and more stable nutrient cycles. Instead of creating a quick fertilizer boost, the compost slowly transforms into humus that, really strengthens the soil ecosystem itself. When the compost turns into humus, after several months, the bottom layers of an undisturbed compost pile begin to resemble finished soil. The material becomes dark, crumbly, and just a bit spongy. You'll notice that the original scraps are no longer recognizable. The smell changes as well. Instead of that sharp odor of decomposing waste, mature humus carries this rich, earthy scent that signals healthy microbial life. This finished material, it holds moisture exceptionally well and releases nutrients gradually. When you add it to garden beds, it improves soil structure while feeding plants over a long period. Gardeners often notice stronger plant establishment, better drought resistance, and healthier root growth after incorporating humus-rich compost. The trade-off here is patience. The primary drawback of the no-turn method is time. A pile left undisturbed may take anywhere from 2 to 4 months, sometimes even longer, to fully mature depending on climate and materials. But, for many gardeners, the benefits really do outweigh the wait. The process requires almost no labor after setup. There's no weekly turning schedule, no constant monitoring, and no heavy lifting. Instead of managing the pile, gardeners allow natural soil builders to do the work. The no-turn compost method proves that effective gardening doesn't always require more effort. By copying the slow processes that occur naturally in forests and meadows, gardeners can create rich humus while doing far less physical work. Worms aerate the pile. Fungi stabilize nutrients. Microbes transform organic matter into lasting soil fertility. Sometimes the best way to help nature is simply to step back and let it operate. If you found this guide helpful, make sure to subscribe to Nature's Flora. Share this video with fellow gardeners, and leave a comment about your own compost experiments. Your support helps the channel continue producing in-depth guides on the natural systems that keep gardens thriving.